The Unborn Whisper. The voice came from inside my roommate's belly. I was standing in the dormitory hallway, still wearing the silk blouse I'd chosen for my engagement party, when Cassidy Morgan cornered me. 4 years of living together, and she'd never once hidden her contempt for me. Now, she wanted an invitation. Juliet. She smiled, all sweetness. We've been roommates forever. You wouldn't leave me off the guest list, would you? I opened my mouth to refuse, and then I heard it. Asterisk. This fake heiress has lived Mother's life long enough. Tonight, she'll be exposed. Father moved up the engagement just for this. Once Mother shows them the proof, everyone will see what a fraud she really is. Asterisk. The voice was small, childlike, and it was calling my fiancé father. I glanced around the empty corridor. No one else was there. Asterisk. Mother will finally take her rightful place, and that impostor will have nothing. Asterisk. The voice was coming from the slight curve of Cassidy's stomach. 3 months earlier, Cassidy had announced she was pregnant. No boyfriend. No explanation. Just a smug certainty that infuriated everyone who asked. You wouldn't understand, she'd said. If you knew who the father was, you'd think I was the luckiest woman alive. We'd speculated endlessly. The mysterious father never appeared. Now I understood. The father was Ashton Sterling, my fiancé since childhood. I should explain about Cassidy. I come from the Ashford family, old money, real estate, generations of wealth. When I moved into the freshman dormitory, Cassidy recognized opportunity immediately. She borrowed things constantly: designer lipstick, cashmere sweaters, electronics. Nothing was ever returned. When I finally confronted her, she turned on the tears. Your family is so wealthy. Why are you being petty about little things? Most people folded when she cried. I wasn't most people. You're right, I said. I would like my things back. She'd stared at me, waiting for someone to rush to her defense. No one did. After that, she hated me properly. Whenever anyone befriended me, she'd whisper, "She only tolerates people who worship her money. Don't waste your time." I responded by presenting her with an itemized list of everything she'd taken, demanding compensation. She'd flushed scarlet and finally stopped her games. Now, 3 years later, she stood before me, demanding entry to my engagement party while carrying my fiancé's child. But it was the voice that truly unsettled me. And its claims, according to that impossible voice, Cassidy was the true Ashford heiress. I had supposedly been switched at birth. A servant had swapped us in our cribs. The child spoke of a past life. In that other timeline, Cassidy had also become pregnant with Ashton's baby. He'd hidden her away in a secret apartment, maintaining our engagement while she grew heavy with his child. When the baby was born, Cassidy had tired of the shadows. She'd brought the infant to the Ashford estate, hoping to force the issue. The family butler had noticed her resemblance to my late mother, Victoria. An investigation had followed. The switch was discovered. But by then, according to the voice, I was too embedded in the family business to discard easily. The Ashfords had chosen to maintain the deception. In that other life, I'd asked Ashton for a divorce when I learned the truth. He'd refused. Cassidy had stormed out with the child, feeling denied her rightful place, and died in a car accident. Now the child had returned to the womb, carrying memories of that other life. It had told Cassidy everything, and she decided to expose me at the engagement party, humiliating me in front of everyone who mattered. When I didn't respond immediately, Cassidy's smile sharpened. Ashton and I are quite close, you know. Her hand rested on her belly. As his very good friend, don't you think I deserve an invitation? I brushed past her without a word. Behind me, the voice whispered, asterisk, arrogant witch. Once Mother claims her birthright, you'll be sleeping on the streets. Asterisk. I didn't believe the voice. Not entirely, but I needed to know. I met Ashton before the party, watching his face carefully as I asked, "Do you know Cassidy Morgan?" Confusion. Your roommate? I've never met her. She claims she's carrying your child. That's impossible. His shock seemed genuine. I've never even spoken to her. I studied him for a long moment. Ashton and I had known each other since childhood. Our families had been close for generations. I thought I knew him. "If I find out you've lied to me," I said quietly, "there will be consequences." He swore his loyalty with almost desperate sincerity. I couldn't tell if he was lying, but ultimately, it didn't matter. This was only an engagement. If he'd betrayed me, he would pay soon enough. That afternoon, the driver took an unfamiliar route to the venue. "Traffic," he explained when I questioned him. His laugh sounded forced. That route was never congested at this hour. By the time we arrived, I was running late. I hurried to the dressing room and found my gown missing. The door wouldn't open, locked from outside. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Cassidy's voice came through the door, dripping with triumph. "Just stay put, Juliet. After I take my rightful place, tonight's party will be for me and Ashton, so sit tight." The child's voice echoed in my mind. Asterisk, "Father is so good to us." He knew she wouldn't cooperate, so he had her locked away. By the time she gets out, everything will be settled. Asterisk. My nails bit into my palms. I'd considered the possibility that Ashton might lie. I hadn't imagined he'd orchestrate something like this, forcing my grandmother's hand in public. But they'd miscalculated badly. I knew something they didn't. Cassidy Morgan could never be the Ashford heiress. I found rope coiled in the corner. Second floor, soft lawn below. When I burst into the ballroom, Cassidy was wearing my gown. She'd thrown herself at my grandmother, tears streaming. "Grandmother, I've finally found you. All these years, I've suffered so much." The Sterlings looked bewildered. "What's going on? Where's Juliet?" Ashton stepped forward, grave and rehearsed. "Mother, father, this woman is the real Ashford granddaughter. She was switched at birth with Juliet. She has proof." Cassidy produced an antique wooden locket, its surface carved with an elegant V. In our family, every child received 3 tokens at birth: gold, silver, and wooden lockets, each personalized. The Sterling's eyes narrowed, clearly calculating. Their gaze settled on Cassidy's belly. She placed a hand on it, affecting shyness. "I'm carrying Ashton's child." She turned back to my grandmother with renewed fervor. "You don't need to worry about the family business anymore. I studied finance. I can handle everything." Scattered snickers rippled through the crowd. My grandmother, despite her age, remained sharp and commanding. She'd run the family empire single-handedly for decades. She didn't acknowledge Cassidy. She looked at Ashton. "Where is Juliet?" Gerald, our butler, stepped forward and handed Cassidy a worn folder. An old photograph slipped out a young couple holding an infant. The woman bore an unmistakable resemblance to Cassidy. My grandmother's voice cut through the room like ice. "I never had biological children. I adopted Victoria as an infant and raised her as my own. When she turned 20, she fell in love with a con artist. I investigated him and found nothing but red flags. I forbade the relationship." She paused, old pain crossing her face. Victoria was already pregnant. I offered a compromise: she could keep the child if she left him. She agreed, but after giving birth to you, she looked at Cassidy. She ran away with that man. She stole proprietary company information and sold it to our competitors. The Ashford Corporation nearly collapsed. Cassidy's face drained of color. "You weren't switched at birth. You were taken by your mother. There was no kidnapping. There was no switch." Cassidy staggered backward. "No, that's impossible. If I wasn't switched, then where did Juliet come from?" My grandmother's gaze found me at the back of the room. To protect the family's reputation, I told everyone Victoria had died of illness. Finding Juliet was an accident. After the company crisis, I needed time away. I found her abandoned by her biological parents, soaked from a night in the rain, burning with fever. I adopted her and raised her not to replace Victoria, but because she deserved it. She looked at Cassidy with cold finality. "Because you're the same age, people assumed she was Victoria's daughter. They were mistaken." The child's voice erupted, panicked. "Asterisk, I don't understand. None of this happened before. It must be that woman. She changed something." Asterisk. Cassidy's world was crumbling. Her memories of her adoptive parents surfaced: a volatile woman who spent recklessly, a man who drank too much and sometimes used his fists, chaos and poverty. When her adoptive mother died, her adoptive father had dumped her at a group home. Learning she was supposedly the true Ashford heiress had made everything make sense. She'd blamed me for stealing her life. Now she was learning her kidnapper was her birth mother. There had been no switch, just ugly truth. Something in her snapped. "I don't believe you," she screamed. "You're lying to protect her. You'd slander your own daughter just to keep your precious Juliet?" Gerald extracted more documents, police reports, court records, evidence of Victoria's crimes. My grandmother's gaze shifted to Ashton, whose forehead glistened with sweat. "You knew Juliet wasn't my biological granddaughter. When you found this girl who resembled Victoria, you thought you'd found leverage. A gullible heir is easier to control than a capable one." Her voice hardened. "The Ashford family has no interest in this alliance or any future business with Sterling Holdings." The Sterlings went pale. For years, their family had survived only through their partnership with us. My grandmother gestured for Gerald to escort them out. Cassidy refused to leave. Forgetting she had an audience, she spoke aloud to her unborn child. "Baby, think. There has to be another way." The voice answered frantically. "I remember things business deals from the future. If we steal those opportunities, the Ashfords will fall." Cassidy's eyes lit up. She whispered urgently in Ashton's ear. His expression transformed despair, giving way to greed. He straightened his jacket and approached my grandmother, his earlier deference replaced by contempt. "I came here trying to do you a favor. Since you've chosen ingratitude, so be it. But don't imagine you won't regret this." Cassidy jabbed a finger at my grandmother. "You decrepit old hag. No children of your own serves you right. Juliet is just a stray you picked up. The moment you're gone, she'll sell everything you built." I'd heard enough. I strode forward and slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the ballroom. She clutched her cheek, sputtering. I slapped her again. "You think that child gives you protection?" I said quietly. "Some actions have consequences. Yours are just beginning." I signaled security. "Remove them. All of them." Afterward, my grandmother patted my hand. "You weren't late. Your timing was perfect. If Cassidy hadn't shown her true colors, I might never have seen Ashton for what he really is." She knew me well. Those slaps had been the gentlest punishment Cassidy would receive. A woman that vain would never accept public humiliation. She would seek revenge and expose herself further. Chapter 2. Within weeks, Sterling Holdings began competing aggressively for the same deals we were pursuing. In one crucial negotiation, they somehow knew our exact offering price and undercut us. Ashton, initially skeptical of Cassidy's claims, was now a true believer. Her impossible knowledge was real. He convinced his reluctant parents to announce their engagement. I received the news with a thin smile. What Cassidy didn't know was that I'd arranged for false information to reach her, a fabricated bottom line she'd eagerly pass to Ashton. The Sterlings won that deal and made a fortune. Their arrogance swelled. They publicly declared they would soon overtake the Ashfords. The fish had taken the bait. Their next target was a plot of land on the city's outskirts, remote, unremarkable, rumored to be slated for an industrial waste facility. But Cassidy's unborn child insisted otherwise. It remembered that a major commercial development would be announced there. Luxury shopping, high-rise condos. The rumors were wrong. The Sterlings began acquiring the land quietly. I made sure they faced competition driving the price up, forcing them to commit more capital. By the end, they'd invested almost everything they had. Their other partners noticed the strange allocation of resources. Existing deals were delayed or canceled. Ashton dismissed all concerns. These people simply lacked vision. Then, the government announced the site's true future, a massive waste processing facility. The land's value collapsed overnight. Ashton's father suffered a heart attack. The child's memory had been real, just imprecise. There was indeed a commercial development coming, but to a different plot of land. One I'd quietly acquired months ago. Cassidy had been briefly committed to a psychiatric facility after Ashton caught her talking to her belly. But when the Sterling situation grew desperate, he released her, hoping the child might offer more guidance. She named stocks that would rise, investments that would pay off. But she'd been hurt by his earlier betrayal. Having her locked away had broken her trust. She demanded he give her the capital directly. She would make the investments herself. Ashton, having no other options, agreed. Cassidy took the money and ran. He tracked her to the airport. In his rage, he attacked her. Police intervened, but not before Cassidy was badly injured. She went into early labor. The child was born healthy. But Cassidy emerged with permanent complications, chronic pain, limited mobility, mounting medical bills. And the baby, once delivered, remembered nothing. Whatever consciousness had carried those fragments of another life had vanished with birth. It was simply an ordinary infant now. Cassidy, unable to care for it and unwilling to try, left it at a children's home. My grandmother set down her tea as I finished my report. You've handled this well. The Sterlings are finished. Ashton faces criminal charges. But what about the girl and the child? Cassidy has received her punishment. The money Ashton gave her won't cover her medical expenses. Her gift is gone. I paused. If she'd never experienced wealth, she might have found contentment in an ordinary life. Now she'll spend her remaining years knowing exactly what she lost. And the child? It never actually harmed me. Its memories are gone. Perhaps with different circumstances, it might have a different life. I met her eyes. The Ashford family won't interfere, but we won't help either. Some things must be left to fate. My grandmother nodded slowly. Chapter 3. My plans to study abroad had been delayed by these events. But the time hadn't been wasted. I'd immersed myself in the family business, learned its intricacies, proven my capabilities. My grandmother watched my progress with quiet satisfaction. One evening, she called me to her study. I've been thinking, she said, about Victoria. I waited. I was too harsh with her, too controlling. I thought I was protecting her, but I drove her away. She looked at me with unusual softness. I won't make that mistake with you. You've earned my trust, Juliet. Not because of blood, but because of who you are. She slid a folder across the desk. Legal documents. The formal transfer of controlling interest in the Ashford Corporation. The company is yours now. I'll advise when you ask. But the decisions are yours to make. I stared at the papers. Grandmother, I didn't adopt you to replace Victoria. I adopted you because you were a child who needed someone, and I was someone who needed purpose. She smiled, a rare and precious thing. But you've become so much more than that. You've become the heir I never knew I needed. 3 years later, the Ashford Corporation had doubled in value. The commercial development I'd invested in had transformed that stretch of the city into the most desirable address in the region. I stood at the window of my corner office, watching the sunset paint the skyline gold. My assistant knocked. Miss Ashford, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says you'll want to hear what she has to say. I turned. Send her in. The woman who entered was thin, worn, walking with a cane. It took me a moment to recognize Cassidy Morgan. She lowered herself into a chair, wincing. You won, she said. No preamble, no pretense. I didn't realize we were competing. She laughed bitterly. I spent 3 years hating you, blaming you for everything. But you know what I finally realized? You didn't steal anything from me. I never had anything to steal. I said nothing. My mother was a thief and a con artist. My father was worse. The life I thought should have been mine never existed. She looked at her hands. I came here to tell you that. And to ask about my daughter. She was adopted, I said. A good family, stable, loving. Cassidy's eyes glistened. I don't deserve to know that. But thank you. She rose, leaning heavily on her cane. At the door, she paused. That voice, the baby's voice, it told me you were the villain of the story, that I was the rightful princess, and you were the impostor who stole my crown. She shook her head. It never occurred to me that maybe we were both just people, that there didn't have to be a villain at all. She left. I stood at the window for a long time after, watching the city lights flicker on one by one. A butterfly's wings can trigger a storm. They can also herald new beginnings. The Ashford story, my story, was only just beginning. The end.